The tractor rolling off the delivery truck was not the tractor Callie Ashworth had paid for. She'd spent 4 months saving for a new John Deere 6120M, a machine with enough horsepower to finally replace the tractor that had been dying on her for 2 seasons. $91,000, financed through the dealership, with a delivery date timed exactly to her spring planting window. She needed it in the ground, working within the week, or she'd lose her contract to plant 60 acres of soybeans for a neighbor who'd already paid her a deposit. Instead, what came down the ramp was an old green tractor with faded paint, a boxy cab with a crack running up the corner of the windshield, and tires worn smooth on the outer edges. No enclosed climate control, no modern digital display, just a tractor that looked like it belonged in a field 20 years ago, not on her farm this spring. Callie stood in her driveway with her arms crossed, watching it roll to a stop, and felt her stomach drop. "This isn't mine," she said to the driver. He checked his clipboard, checked the tractor's serial number, and swore under his breath. Wrong unit. Somehow her order had gotten crossed with another customer's, and the tractor she'd actually purchased was sitting on a lot 2 counties away. But the more she looked at the machine sitting in her driveway, the less certain she became that the dealer had actually made the mistake everyone thought they had. If you believe hard work and experience can turn an overlooked opportunity into something extraordinary, subscribe and join us for more stories like this. And before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The dealership called within the hour. The manager, a man named Russ Deakins, who Callie had worked with for years, was apologetic and businesslike. A shipping error. They'd send a truck first thing tomorrow, swap the tractors, and she'd have her 6120M by the following afternoon. No cost to her, no harm done. It should have been simple. Her farm sat on 140 acres outside a small town called Millbrook, land she'd worked alone since her husband passed 6 years earlier, raising 2 kids and keeping the operation afloat on margins thinner every season. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't in a position to gamble on anything. Every dollar she spent had to work for her, and the new tractor was supposed to be the thing that finally let her stop patching together a decade-old machine with baling wire and stubbornness. So when Russ offered to fix his mistake, everyone expected her to say yes immediately. Instead, she asked for 1 day. She walked around the old tractor twice before she even climbed into the seat. She listened to it idle, put her hand on the hood to feel the engine's rhythm, checked the fluid levels, and traced her fingers along a hydraulic line that had clearly been added after the tractor left the factory. The hour meter read just under 6,000 hours, low for a machine this old. Somebody had taken care of it. She noticed the transmission lever had a duded transmission lever, had an extra notch that didn't match anything she'd seen on a standard model. She noticed the rear hydraulic outlets were larger than typical, with a second remote valve, bolted on, that most tractors this age never had. She didn't say anything about it yet, not even to herself, not fully. But something told her not to let this tractor leave her property. When Russ called back to confirm the pickup time, Callie said the 4 words nobody expected. "Don't take it back." Russ was quiet on the line for a second. "You sure?" "This isn't the tractor you ordered, Callie. It's older, it's got less power, I know what it is," she said. "I want to keep it for now. Just delay the swap." Her neighbor Dale, who farmed the section next to hers and had known her since she was a teenager, thought she'd lost her mind when she told him. "You're turning down a brand new machine for something with a cracked windshield?" he said, shaking his head. "Callie, that's not like you." But that wasn't the part that made her stop the dealer from taking it back. That part, she wasn't ready to explain yet. Not until she understood it herself. Callie's knowledge of machinery didn't come from a classroom. It came from a workshop behind her father's house in rural Kentucky, where she'd spent her teenage years handing him wrenches and learning, slowly, why certain engines sounded healthy and others didn't. Her father never had money to replace broken equipment. When something failed, he fixed it, and Callie fixed it alongside him. He used to tell her that a tractor's value wasn't printed on the sticker. It was in how it was built, what it could still do, and whether the person looking at it knew what they were looking at. Anybody can read a price tag, he told her once, elbow deep in a transmission case. Not everybody can read a machine. She'd carried that lesson through every season since, through years of nursing her own aging equipment, because a new tractor was never in the budget, through nights spent under a shop light diagnosing problems other people would have just paid someone else to fix. She'd learned to listen for the difference between a normal engine knock and a warning sign. She'd learned what certain hydraulic setups were built to do, even when they weren't advertised as anything special. The dealership saw a single mom running a modest grain and hay operation. What they didn't know was that she understood the mechanical bones of a tractor better than most of the men who worked their sales floor. Standing in her driveway, looking at that old machine, she recognized the extra hydraulic remote and the unusual gear range for what they likely were. A factory high-flow configuration, uncommon even when the tractor was new, originally built for running specialized equipment that needed more hydraulic muscle than a standard model could deliver. She'd seen the setup once before, on a tractor her father worked on decades earlier, built for farmers running big square balers or high-capacity augers. If she was right, this tractor could do something her new one, fresh off the lot, might not be able to do nearly as well. But she still had to find out whether it could actually deliver on what she believed it could. Her chance came 3 days later. A neighboring farmer, Tom Griggs, had a job nobody wanted, moving 11 acres of heavy, wet hay bales off ground that had flooded the week before, using a baler that needed serious hydraulic flow just to keep up. His own tractor had stalled out twice, trying to run it. Dale showed up to watch, arms crossed, clearly expecting the old tractor to struggle or quit outright. Callie hooked up the implement, eased the tractor into the field, and opened the throttle. The tractor didn't strain. The hydraulic flow kept the baler running at full pace even through the heaviest sections of hay, something Tom's own machine, newer but underpowered in that one specific way, had never been able to do. 2 hours later, the field was clear. Tom stood by the fence afterward, quiet for a moment. "I didn't figure that old thing could run my baler that clean," he admitted. Dale didn't say much either, but he was watching the tractor differently now. That first job proved one thing: the tractor could do real work, and do it well. But what happened during that field made Callie take an even closer look at something the dealership had apparently missed entirely. She called a retired equipment mechanic named Earl Voss, a man who'd spent 40 years servicing farm machinery around 3 counties and had a reputation for knowing tractors most people had forgotten existed. He drove out the following weekend, walked around the machine twice, just like Callie had, and let out a low whistle. "You know what you've got here?" he asked her. She told him what she suspected: the factory high-flow hydraulics, the extra remote valve, the unusual transmission range. Earl nodded slowly. "That's part of it. But look here." He pointed to a stamped plate near the engine block, half hidden under decades of grime. "This was built in a limited production run. Factory ordered it this way for large-scale hay and forage operations. Most got worked to death and scrapped. The rest are sitting in collections. Finding one still running, in field-ready shape, with hours this low, that's rare. Rare enough that guys running big custom baling operations actively hunt for machines like this." Callie felt her pulse pick up. How rare? "Rare enough," Earl said, "that this tractor by itself is probably worth more to the right buyer than what your new one cost. And that's before you count what it can actually do for you every season." The dealership hadn't misjudged the tractor's mechanical condition. They'd simply never looked closely enough to know what they were holding. It had been sitting in inventory catalogued as a standard used trade-in, when in reality it was something specialty buyers would pay a serious premium for. The wrong delivery wasn't a disaster anymore. It was starting to look like an opportunity nobody else had recognized. The tractor started paying for itself almost immediately. That first job for Tom Griggs saved him from losing hay to weather damage, and he paid Callie $600 for the afternoon's work, money she hadn't budgeted for, income the tractor itself had generated. Word moved fast in a farming community that size. Within a month, 2 more farmers asked her to run their balers on ground her own contract didn't require her to touch. By midsummer, she was running custom hay work most weekends, clearing close to $4,000 in a single season, doing jobs other tractors in the area couldn't handle as efficiently. By fall, she wasn't just saving money, she was earning it, steadily, from a machine that had arrived on her property by mistake. Russ from the dealership eventually heard what had happened, first through a rumor at the local co-op, then directly from Tom Griggs, who mentioned it while picking up parts. Russ drove out to Callie's farm himself. "I heard you never took the swap," he said. "I didn't," Callie told him. He walked around the tractor, listened to Earl's assessment secondhand, and understood, finally, what his own dealership had overlooked. "We could have sold that thing to a specialty buyer for a lot more than we valued it at," he admitted. "Might still be worth talking about a buyback, if you're interested." Callie shook her head. "It's not for sale." A year earlier, she might have jumped at the offer. Now she understood exactly what the tractor meant to her operation. Not just its resale value, but what it could keep earning her, season after season, as long as she kept it working. By the end of that year, the tractor had brought in more than $9,000 in custom work, on top of everything it saved her by finally letting her retire her old, failing equipment. It had covered its own value twice over, and it was still running. What made the difference wasn't luck. It was the same lesson her father had taught her years earlier in that workshop back in Kentucky, that a machine's real worth isn't printed anywhere. It's recognized by the person who knows how to look past the surface and understand what's actually in front of them. The tractor that rolled off that truck by mistake became Callie's greatest asset, not because it was secretly special the moment it arrived, but because she was the one person paying attention who knew how to see it. Everyone else saw an old machine with a cracked windshield. She saw 6,000 careful hours, a factory configuration built for exactly the kind of work her farm needed, and years of her own hard-earned knowledge finally paying off. Price tags tell you what somebody thinks something is worth. They don't tell you what it can actually do in the hands of someone who understands it. Callie still has that tractor. It still runs every season. And every time someone new asks her why she never sent it back, she gives them the same answer her father gave her, all those years ago in that Kentucky workshop. Anybody can read a price tag, she tells them. Not everybody can read a machine.